wife, BOPIE, has a client who has asked her to create a one-of-a-kind beautiful piece of jewelry using a larger tangerine orange piece of Bahia Citrine from Brazil. The client wants a rectangle or an emerald-shaped gemstone. For consignments or special orders like this one, I always start with a piece of rough that's a bit larger than I need. And this piece of rough is 28 by 25 by 20 millimeters and weighs in at a whopping 63.125 carats. Definitely a little bit larger than I need, but this will give me the final gemstone that I do need. And because of the shape of this rough, I'm not going to trim it off. I'll just grind it down to the right size for our client. Okay, so let's take our Bahia Citrine and immerse it in refractol liquid, which has the same refractive index as quartz, and that'll help us look into the interior of our stone. And we can see there is an inclusion right there. It's not too far in. To the stone. We should be able to work around that. There's a couple of small inclusions in this stone, but this piece of rough is a lot bigger than we need, so we should be able to work through those issues. Okay, whenever I put a stone into my refractol, the way I get the refractol off, it's a little bit oily of a substance. I take it to the sink and use Dawn or any degreasing liquid dishwasher detergent, and that takes the refractol off right away. So now what I want to do is use one of my rougher laps and create a flat spot on this stone, and with the rougher lap it'll have pretty good scratches, and that'll help my DOP adhere to this citrine. So the flat spot I want to put it on this. I want to make this a flat spot because of the way the stone is shaped, and I'm trying to get an emerald, and I have excess rough. I could trim this up with a trim saw, but I think I'll just grind it down. If I thought I could save big pieces, I'd probably trim it up, but I think all I'm going to end up doing is I would end up with a bunch of smaller pieces if I trimmed it up, so because I'm not going to get one big cut off of it. So anyway, I'll just grind down the flat spot, and we'll be ready to attach the stone to the DOP. So now I have a nice flat spot, and that it's all scratched up is good, and I'll attach my stone to the DOP on that flat spot. As I said before, our client wants this gemstone cut into a rectangle or what's called an emerald shaped design. And I don't have any one favorite emerald shaped design, at least not yet. But a design from the facetdiagrams.org website called Ideal Emerald 133 for quartz is on my short list of favorites. This design was created by Steven Weintraub Jr. and again it can be found and downloaded from the facetdiagrams.org website. I have cut this design before and I know that it cuts a very nice gemstone. So let's start preforming our stone. Okay, so I just finished preforming our Bahia Citrine with 120 grit topper, 120 diamond grit topper, and then I used my 340 grit topper. So now I'll go over it one more time, just the bottom part, not the girdle. The girdle's close to where I need it, not exactly, but close. And I'll move that to exactly where I need it with a finer grit of a lap. But the bottom part, this hieroglyphics here means that this one with this dot and this dot is where I use my Sharpie. And go ahead and use your Sharpie when you want to mark where you want to cut a stone to. And that told me where to stop each of these steps. So I wanted about a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 on this. This cross mark here, after I got this done, I've still got this kind of mess here to clean up. So I can bring the bottom down and clean up a lot of that. And then when I get the length to width just right, I think it'll clean up the rest of it. So I had to check my crown to width ratio, which is given in the instructions, which is 0.139, and you multiply your crown to width ratio by the width of the stone, and that tells you how much space you need for the crown or the upper half of the stone. And don't forget to add in your girdle. And girdles usually 0.3 to 0.5 millimeters, or a lot of cutters use a percentage of the width to determine their girdle size. I use generally 0.3, 0.5. It's a larger stone, 0.5 will work fine. There's no hard and fast rule. So I can go down to about there and clean up a lot of this. So rather than switching and using a finer grit, since I have quite a ways to go, I'm going to go ahead and go over just these 3 step cuts with my 320, it's a 320 grit topper. I was able to get rid of the fracture on the outside of this gemstone by moving the pavilion down. And I went over the pavilion first with a 320 grit topper, then a 600 grit topper. Then I went straight to a 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap. And from there, I went to polish, and I used my creamway lap. And although you can polish with just a creamway lap and a water drip, it polishes much faster, and I kind of supercharged my creamway by using a bat stick by Gyarlus. In this case, I used a high premium, high purity cerium oxide. It's called the high purity cerium oxide bat stick. And I just start my creamway lap with a slow drip of water and run the bat stick over the lap, and that polished this Bahia Citrine right up. So now I'm ready to transfer the gemstone and cut the upper half, and I'll show you how I transfer the stone. So what we're going to do when we transfer a stone is we're going to attach a dop to the bottom part that we've now polished, and remove the dop from the upper part and cut and polish the upper part. So to do that, you need a transfer fixture, which is a tool. I have 2 here from Ultratech that I'm not recommending you buy 2. You just need 1, but over time I have 2. I actually have 3 transfer fixtures. But the 2 from Ultratech are the same size, but the opening one is smaller than the other. So for me, as this is a larger stone, I'll use the transfer fixture with a larger opening, but it's not really that big of a problem. The important thing about a transfer fixture is that everything is aligned perfectly, so that the dop, when you finish your transfer, your stone is in alignment. Now, to get a dop to put in the bottom, dops come in different shapes. You have flat, which is what I start most of my stones with, a flat dop. That's why I grind a flat spot on the stone to attach the initial dop. You have cone shaped when you're cutting a standard round brilliant or any rounds or many others with a permanent center point in the pavilion. You use a cone shaped dop to transfer. There's also V dops, which is what I'll be using in this case. And a V dop allows you to put the V in your keel of your stone and align it. There's also specialty dops for cutting emerald shape. When you have a lot of tourmalines, various sizes of length to width dops. I have collected them and used very rarely. I would not say for a new cutter you don't need these, but these emerald dops come in a flat and a V shape, because when you're cutting a tourmaline or long narrow stone, you're going to have a keel. So those are the other type of dops you could have. So we're going to attach our stone to a V-shaped dop. Okay, for the Ultratech, the dops, the flats and the rounds come in a 45, they're cut at a 45-degree angle, and that's the keyed feature of the Ultratech. So what happens with those is you put the stone, this dop will slide under the handle here slightly, and that aligns it. Then you push the top down, tighten it down, and then if I were cutting around, the other side would also have a 45-degree cut, which I would slide under there, and the stone would be perfectly aligned with the facets for transfer, and you could just transfer it and put it in your spindle and start cutting. Now, this is not the case with V shapes, because they don't need to be that way. So in this case, the V shape is not cut at a 45-degree angle, but it still fits in your Ultratech machine. It just bumps up against the handle. So you don't need the keyed feature. You can override it as well. So for our stone, we just align it. I will normally set up my transfer fixture so that the bottom part, I'll push down so that it's flat on the surface, and then tighten up the bottom part, and then use the top part to put the glue in here, and then just lower the top part onto the bottom. So I either use two-part epoxy in some cases if the stone's very large, but more and more I'm using epoxy less, but Devcon two-part epoxy works fine. And then I would let it cure overnight, or if I was in a hurry, I would put it in the oven, set the temperature for 200 degrees. When it reaches 200 degrees, turn it off, let the oven cool down, and it would be ready to work on the stone. But more and more I've been using Light Cure by Helios. This is a UV activated super glue, and this has worked fine. Some people tell me that when they order their Helios that the bottle is dried up. I would say if you're ordering, this is not inexpensive. If you order this product, I would say do not order on eBay. Sorry, it may be dried up. And if you order it on Amazon and it comes dried up, which may happen, send it back. So now we just put a drop in the V-shaped dop, push our stone onto the dop, and then turn the dop around as necessary to let gravity have the adhesive, the super glue flow onto the dop a little bit and onto the stone a little bit. And when you think you have things just about where you want them, then you can hit it with your UV light, and in about 2 or 3 seconds the super glue is cured and you're ready to remove the other dop and start cutting the upper half of the stone. So you can touch the super glue and see that it's already all dried and cured. Okay, so now that I've got the dop attached to my stone, I need to remove the original dop, and I use kind of an extra set of hands. This was a cheap mini vise that I bought either on Lowe's or Home Depot. It was only it was less than $5. I've been meaning to get a better vise. I think it's handy, and eventually I will, but this will work for now. And what I do is I get a piece of cloth and wet it and wrap it around the stone to help keep the stone cool. This is a larger stone, and the old adhesive is going to come right off. So I probably don't really need this, but it's a matter of habit with me. And if you don't think you need to do this, don't. But this is just the way I do it. So then I put it in my vise. And I have a Blazer propane. It works great. It didn't work great when I first got it, but since then it's been, all of a sudden it started working and has been great ever since. So I'll get a flame going and heat the dot. And that's it. So now the only thing left is to remove the old adhesive, and I just generally, this is a big stone, I hold the stone, not the dot, hold the stone, and with my my knife I'll just scrape off. Okay, and I can scrape off the rest pretty simply, and I'll just be ready to cut the upper half of our stone. Okay, now with our angle at 90 degrees and our index at either the 48 or the 96 for the stone facing this way, or I could put the index at the 72 and the 24 with the index with the stone facing this way. But this has the widest angle of the widest part of the girdle, so I'm going to use the 48 or 96. And I use the 48 just because that puts this dop retention screw at the top of my machine, which is easier for me to reach with my Allen wrench when I want to tighten it up once I get everything set. That's the only reason I use the 48 instead of the 96. So then what we do is using this calibrated block, and I bought my own calibrated block to put that on top of just to raise things up a bit, and your flattest lap, which in my case is my ceramic lap, that gives us a flat spot, and we just lower the machine onto the precision block and align, make sure our facets are in a line. Let me show you that. Okay, so all I do is lower the mast until my stone touches the precision block, and then whenever I raise it and it breaks the plane of that block all along the facet at the same time, I'm in alignment. And this is such a large facet, it'd be almost impossible to not be in alignment, but if you were like this and you're touching the stone, that would be out of alignment, and when you cut the top part it would not. You'd have problems lining up your facets. So that's how you align your stone. So now I'll just tighten the dop retention screw and we'll be ready to cut the upper half of our gemstone. I have pre-formed our citrine, the upper half, the crown. And the first lap I used, and I've only used, is the 600 grit topper. And I haven't cut these corner facets yet, because those will cut quick, and I'll use a finer lap to cut those in. So now I'm going to move straight to 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap. I finished polishing the upper half of our Bahia Citrine with my creme lap and cerium oxide stick, and now I'll set up the stone to cut and polish the table. I finished polishing up the table, and our stones really come to life. I can see the color now. It's really a nice color. And so I'm going to soak it in the acetone, and then we'll weigh it, measure it, and send it off to Bopie. Bopie, my wife, has a client who loves the color of Bahia Citrine. Our client wants Bopie to create a unique piece of jewelry using a large Bahia Citrine cut into an emerald shape. And all the way through cutting this gemstone, up until I polished it, I had no idea what the final color would look like. But then, just as I was polishing the crown, the color finally popped, and wow, it was a very nice tangerine orange. The ideal emerald, like all step cut rectangle or emerald shaped designs, step cuts are not difficult, and so this design is not a difficult design to cut or polish, and I would recommend this cut for gem cutters of all skill levels. As far as cutting the Bahia Citrine material, Bahia is a very beautiful color of citrine, and I find quartz citrine not difficult to cut. But please let me know in the comments what you think of the design and of this Bahia Citrine that I just cut, and as always, happy fasting, everyone.